media project.
What do you mean Pleasure Island's been shut down since 1969? That travel agent I bought tickets from in that Fort Econoline van assured me it was open. Now, about giving me a refund. What do you mean by that? He told me he was affiliated with you and... Hello? Hello? Darn. My wife's gonna ride my ass like a lawnmower when she finds out I blew our family vacation money. There must be somewhere cheap to take the family this summer.
I know a place.
Really?
Yes, really, you stupid bastard.
Well, there's no reason to get personal just because my parents weren't.
Why not take the family to Busta Rhymes Island this year?
Busta Rhymes Island? You mean the Busta Rhymes Island located on Mill Pond in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts?
Don't steal my lines if you know what's good for you.
Oh, sorry.
Busta Rhymes Island has rope swinging, blueberries, and stuff Busta would enjoy.
Will it cost me anything?
Not a penny, you cheap bastard.
Again, just because my parents aren't married, there is no reason to get...
Turn a rowboat today. Busta Rhymes Island is a real place. Look it up on Wikipedia and Google Maps if you don't believe us. Busta Rhymes Island is in no way affiliated with Busta Rhymes, but sooner or later he's got to find out there's an island named after him and want to check it out. I mean, come on, wouldn't you?
Excuse me, do you mind if I join you? Are you sure you don't mind? You're absolutely sure I won't be disturbing you?
That's enough. Normal view.
Normal view, normal view, normal view, normal view.
Hello and welcome to the Mental Suppository. I'm Brett Herholtz.
I'm Andrew Shanley.
And we've been doing movie riffing the last few weeks, but we're going to be talking about the kings of movie riffing today.
Yes, the masters of the disasters, the ones who created it all, the people who did Mystery Science Theater 3000.
And we've got a whole episode planned on that.
Yep.
Right after a word from our sponsor.
Hey kids, you want to party with the Camaro Man? Or maybe your hot mom does. Now your parents can hire the Camaro Man to come to your birthday party. But only if your mom is single and hot, because that's the way the Camaro Man likes them. Desperate after a divorce and on the rebound, you get a cake shaped just like the Camaro Man drives in his hit series, The Camaro Man, as well as Camaro Man prizes and games. I'll also provide a few special adult beverages I can enjoy with your hot mom. And she'll probably be calling me Daddy, although I prefer to be called the Camaro Man. Get your parents to hire the Camaro Man today for your next birthday. Your hot mom will thank me later. Contact the Camaro Man on Craigslist or OnlyFans today.
The Camaro Man might have several restraining orders, I would imagine. Oh, God.
Oh, boy.
Well,
back to the show.
Honestly, I mean, they only, people have always said, movie riffing, it's got to be easy. We prove for a fact it's not easy coming up with stuff right on the fly. The men and women at Mystery Science Theater 3000 only make it look easy.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, they just, it's like you've got to be good and you've got to be right there because it's like doing it on the cuff. It's a lot of fun, but at the same time, you're not always on. So it's understandable why over time they script the episodes because you've got so many episodes to do and you can't improv every single.
No, you can't. But I mean, also the other thing too is while you're watching the film, if something funny happens, that you can you have to be so on point.
Oh yeah.
With your riffs, you really have to be kind of like one of those people where you have to be so on point with all the jokes that you can throw into these movies. And let's be perfectly honest, these are not easy movies to watch.
Oh no, they are. A lot of these movies are painful to watch.
Yeah, they're actually some of the most painful, terrible films ever made, and I my hat goes off to them because they have to sift through all these and they have to figure out which ones can they make the most fun of. And there are some real good ones, and then there are some really bad ones. I mean, I was a huge fan of them when I first saw them back in college. It was actually like high school. I remember.
Yes.
It was high school that I really was
There's got
exposed
to
to
be
these
something.
guys.
There's got to be something in the water in Minnesota just to make them so good at riffing. I mean, these they're just it's just like to just be so on point. With their quips is just it's a talent. And I was actually going to ask when was your first memory of first seeing Mystery Science Theater 3000? Because for me, it was actually probably like 1989.
Yeah.
Every Saturday afternoon, every Saturday we'd go over my grandparents' house to visit, and usually my mom would be talking with my grandfather for hours. They could just strike up a conversation and just talk for hours. And for us, we just go off to the next room to watch television, because I think somewhere around that time they had gotten cable, and there was only I think around that time there was maybe MTV and a few other channels, and they had just launched the Comedy Channel in around 88, 89.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think that's when they first started it. My first exposure to it was I was just a freshman in high school phase.
Yep.
And I was like 1990, 1989 or whenever, I forget exactly when, and they started showing the show on Comedy Central, and that was a network that was just basically it was Saturday morning cartoons. They had just gotten rid of. They got rid of Saturday morning cartoons, and all that was on for Saturday morning was this show.
Yeah.
And I remember when I watched the first episode I think I can recall was the Side Hackers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's like the first episode I can really truly remember actually watching. And it's so people know what that is. It's like one of the worst. It's like one of those biker movies that was made in the 1960s. And it was about these guys who basically they side hack. They have like a sidecar and they do races, but there's a guy on the side of the car.
It's not as cool as it sounds, people.
It's like some fatty little racing genre that showed up for 6 months, that probably after about 3 months people were like, yeah, this sucks. Kind of like the Fast and the Furious franchise, and they realized that street racing wasn't going to last the first they had to figure out other things to make the Fast and the Furious franchise keep going. And
thank God they didn't make more Side Hackers movies like the Fast and the Furious, because that would have been.
Oh my God! Side Hackers 2, Side Hackers 3. Can you imagine how bad that would have been? That would be ridiculous. But I remember watching that, and then just getting hooked into it. Every single episode was something new. They'd have skits. The skits were funny.
Oh yeah, the skits were always the host segments were always hilarious.
And my whenever you talk about comedy, comedy to me is about taking something that's extreme and turning it funny, making something over the top, and that the whole premise obviously is over the top. A guy gets shot. He's working at some crappy job.
Yes.
And then
basically a space janitor.
His bosses just don't like him, so they just literally shoot him into space, into a space station where he has to watch terrible movies that they then monitor his mind for some experiment. And it's just
I heard that was actually something they kind of created on the cuff, because it's they in the original version of the show was. The whole idea was Joel shot himself into space and it was watching these movies, but to sort of create kind of a narrative, when it was still on KMT or the channel it was on in Minnesota, they decided that, to create a song that, his bosses didn't like him, so they shot him into space.
Yeah.
And so, Trace and J. Elvis Weinstein, who would, of course, play the parts of Crow and Tom Servo, were, kind of tapped to play the Mads, which I think was more out of convenience than anything else, just because they happened to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But Actually, it's funny you'd mentioned Side Hackers as your first memory of Mystery Science Theater. My first memory was actually the movie The Robot Monster.
Oh,
And it
that's
was-
another one.
And it was one of
Yeah.
these movies when I first tuned in, I didn't know what was going on at first. It's like okay, it's an old movie, black and white movie. We were still in that generation where we watched black and white movies and didn't really think anything of it. It was just, it was just television entertainment, bad movie. So you're watching the movie, and you know even as a kid, it's a bad film. But
Oh,
suddenly
God,
all of a sudden these voices started showing up that weren't part of the movie, and you're thinking it's like, what's going on? And then you realize there's like these little figures down at the bottom of the screen, watching the movie, you realize they're the ones making the comments, and suddenly you realize this bad movie is suddenly slightly more enjoyable to watch just because of the quips.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. And you find yourself also starting to make comments during the movie as well. I think it's just natural to do something like that. But the one episode I actually remember really watching and really enjoying for the first time was The Crawling Hand.
Oh, yeah.
That was the one that had Alan Hale Jr., which everybody knows is the skipper from Gilligan's Island.
Skipper!
It also had one of my favorite quips in the episode, "Where's the body, little buddy?" And that was the moment where I was like, I like this show.
Yeah.
I was that's kind of cemented me as a fan.
Well, the other thing too is like you gotta understand when we were watching regular UHF TV.
Yep.
And that we've talked about UHF TV.
Oh, absolutely.
We had stuff like Creature Double Feature where they would show movies just like this,
Yes.
but without the jokes.
Exactly.
You know? Like it would be just like a dual thing on the weekends, like on Saturday afternoons, and we watch these terrible movies.
Yes.
And the next thing you know, it's like, now they have jokes. And I'm like, oh. And like, even if you had seen the movie before, like, especially when they got to the Gamera movies.
Yes. I love the Gamera movies.
My God. They just took it to a whole new level.
And that was another one of those really great host segments where it was like each of the characters, Joel, Crow, and Servo, were all doing various songs that were tributes to Gamera, and Crow busts out with this rap song, about Gamera, where, and it's another one of those things where I almost wet myself laughing when Crow says, "And don't stand behind him because if he squats in the street," of course Joel has to stop him because the way Joel Hodgson sort of mentioned, his character of Joel Robinson, sort of like Dave Seville with Alvin and the Chipmunks, where he's always trying to wrangle the bots. First, with Servo, first played by J. Elvis Weinstein, and then later by Kevin Murphy, who became my favorite version of Tom Servo because he just seemed to. They both kind of brought their own sort of, magic to the role. Whereas, Josh Weinstein said he kind of made Tom Servo, gave him his mighty voice, and kind of based Tom Servo as kind of a smarmy radio DJ. Whereas Kevin Murphy kind of played the character as kind of an intellectual chubby guy, as he put it, because he said, I'm kind of a stocky guy and all that. And I always liked, like Kevin Murphy and Trace's Servo and Crow going back and forth, because it was like Servo always knew how to, push Crow's buttons. And like whenever Crow made Servo cry, he just, because it's like, watching, two brothers just, torment one another.
I think
or two siblings torment one another.
I think that, like, of all the shows that I really regularly watched, it was either Star Trek, or it was Mystery Science Theater 3000. Honestly, and like it was not. You take a look at the production value of that show; it's not very high.
Oh no,
not at all.
That's how it started. It was one of those like it was produced at a UHF station out in Minnesota, and it was just like one of those things that Joel Hodgson had been working as a stand-up comic and decided he had kind of had enough and just kind of came back to Minnesota and started sort of teaching improv classes, as well as I think he was. Fans will have to correct me on this, but I think he was also like doing classes in writing and puppetry or something like that, and that's how he met Josh and Trace.
Well, I mean, the other thing too is like the Invention Exchange.
Yes,
was something that literally just kind of went into the style of humor that he had. He was a prop comic.
Yes, he was.
He was a prop comic, and
a good prop comic. Unlike
he was
some
a very
other
good prop
comics.
comic. But like he'd have to kind of constantly, create these like crazy little inventions for every single time he went out on the road.
Right.
And what afforded him the invention exchange, gave him really more of a platform to kind of like set up it's the science fiction-y, they're making funny little things, whatever. Yes. And that was kind of the thing that made the invention exchange work even better with his style of humor, because not a lot of people could get his prop humor because it was just like the invention exchange,
What was your favorite invention in the invention exchange, if you could think of one?
Mr. Big Head, I think, was pretty
I
fun.
love Mr. Big Head because that was the one that actually ended up showing up on War of the Colossal Beast. And it was another one of those segments that just made me just laugh to the point where I was like falling on the floor when they just started singing the Big Head song, just like, who's that guy with the big head?
The big
And then you had, Mike Nelson show up as Glenn Manning, the amazing colossal man. And
oh God, yeah.
That was one of the things I really missed when Mike started, took over as host of the show. Not that he was a bad host, but it's just like you miss those segments where he'd play like the bit parts, like he'd play the amazing colossal man, or he'd play Hugh Beaumont, or
one of
the characters from the movie or something.
Well, the initial run of the program, with Joel as the protagonist and Bots, and then you had like Dr. Forrester and TV's Frank.
Yeah, I thought that was like
those are the guys
sort of took off.
That was the first 5. That was like 5 years of that, 6 years of that, and then after a while, like they just needed to have. I mean, especially so you had Mike Nelson, Mary Jo Farrell,
Mary Jo
Pearl. I'm sorry, Pearl. Sorry, Frank Conniff. They were basically the people who were like writers in the background, and of course, you had. Who are the other cast members here?
Kevin Murphy, who was, I think,
Kevin Murphy.
Before he did Servo, he was kind of like worked out, did like production or directing like the host segments and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And when Josh left, it was actually one of those things. Kevin Murphy says, "I think I'd like to actually try to do Tom Servo if you don't mind." And they, it's like one of those things like, well, nobody else is asking, so go for it.
I mean, they really did. One of the other things that they did was they went after like the short films that you'd see in like.
Oh, the short films were always
in home ec class.
Always the best.
Like with Mr. B Natural.
Oh gosh.
Remember that one?
Yeah, the sort of Peter Pan sort of character that was usually played by people like Mary Martin, and she's just kind of really just almost demonic looking and just.
Yeah. And they had like they would find movies.
And Joel's like, "Mr. B, you're hot."
I feel funny. I mean, they made, and some of the things about their humor was, and this is sort of a trap they kind of fell into, is some of their humor was topical for the time.
Yes.
So like if you watch them today, some of the jokes kind of fall flat.
Oh yeah. It's like anything.
But that's mainly because the humor was of a joke at the time. They didn't really kind of think about that, but that's something that they did. But one of the things that they continued to do was they continued to improve upon the quality of the show and the writing, and they made the riff.
Oh, absolutely.
More. I mean, some other movies there's another movie that I absolutely hilariously. I remember I used to watch this on TV UHF. Was Warrior of the Lost World.
Oh gosh, that movie was terrible.
I know. And
that
I remember
City Limits.
I didn't see City Limits, but I remember seeing Warrior of the Lost World. I was a kid, and I'd watch Warrior of the Lost World on the afternoon UHF channels.
Yes.
Never had to have this. I mean, and then like and it was like one of those
what's her name from Star Trek on it?
Yeah. I mean, it was like one of those really, really bad, like post-apocalyptic motorcycle Mad Max ripoffs from Italy.
Yes.
From the 1980s. And then they riffed it, and I was like, I thought that was I was like, in high school when that happened, I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever.
There was also a scene, it was another one of those host segment scenes where they're doing a skit called, I think it was like the Warrior of the Lost World if he failed his license, getting his license. And then Joel is the paper chase guy, and
Oh my God.
and I think Crow was playing his mother.
Yeah, like listen, but Mom, I gotta get to the Warrior of the Lost World. Oh,
Hello, Miss Warrior. Oh,
my
hello
God.
there. And of
Oh my
course, you know,
God.
of course, Crow, I think, is doing it in a Minnesota accent, and that was
Yeah,
the
of
other
course.
thing, was a lot of the humor was very based in their region. You know, it was very Minnesota sort of humor and places they went to, but still, it was funny. You know, it was like Monty Python. People thought Monty Python wouldn't work because they thought in America because they thought the jokes were too British, and yet people still got that. And
Yeah,
it's the
well-
same way with Mystery Science Theater 3000. It's definitely people who grew up in Minnesota, and there's stuff they talk about that's very much in their region, but it's still, you still laugh along.
I mean, honestly, after and of course, like when they had
Sort of like us talking about the ground round.
yeah. You haven't lived unless you've eaten at the ground round at least once in your lifetime.
Yes.
But yeah, so like they had the first initial run of the show for like 6 years was like that cast.
I know.
And then Mike, I guess he had some personal issues or just wanted to leave the show.
Oh, no, it was Joel who left first.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Joel was the one who left, and they kind of had to throw things around. And so, like, that's of course when Mike came in.
And I guess Joel had actually personally chosen Mike to be the host because he thought he looked the best with puppets.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like, there was some Joel left the show so that the show could continue.
Right. He didn't want to leave the show, but him and Jim Mallon, his the co-producer, co-creator of the show, had kind of started butting heads over the fact that Jim Mallon wanted to do a Mystery Science Theater 3000 movie, and Joel just didn't want to do that. And some of it I can understand because it just so it's a show that riffs movies to begin with, so it's kind of.
I remember actually going to see that because obviously that was the next step was the movie, and they did do the movie, and TV's Frank wasn't in it. I don't think.
Yes, he had just left, and actually, he was the only one who actually left on his own. On his own, who he wasn't sort of forced out of the show or
he
felt
just
burnt out. He just decided he wanted to
go
off and do other things because it's like a lot of them, like Trace, J. Elvis Weinstein, Joel, they had all kind of left the show with bad feelings. I mean, even J. Elvis Weinstein talked later on about actually finally meeting up with Joel when Joel had come out to California and Josh had been working as a writer for a few years, and there was still a bit of hard feelings, but I guess what Josh ended up doing is he just said, you know what, I can't, I don't want to, we're going to be living in the same area. We got to kind of clear the air. So he written Joel a long letter just explaining all that, and the two just ended up patching things up after that.
Yeah, when the show the other thing too is when they did the movie, they did This Island Earth.
Yes,
I think that when they got the budget from what was it, Universal?
Yeah,
they got this.
Yeah, that was a Universal movie. So
they got so much freaking money to make this movie. They were like, we don't even know what the hell to do. They didn't even know what to do.
That's what you get for working on the cheap for so long. It's like one of those things you're so used to, working things from the ground up. Suddenly you have all this enormous budget. It's like, shit.
And then they had this and they had that and everything else like that. And then what ended up happening was that they transitioned after the movie. The movie was okay. It's pretty funny.
Oh yeah, it has some great scenes in it. I think, of course, one of the best scenes was Normal View.
Normal View, Normal View, Normal View.
I remember seeing that for the first time, and it's like,
what the heck is he doing? What is he doing down there in the basement? But so they did the movie, and of course after that, the only person that was left was you didn't have TV's Frank anymore. He had Dr. Forrester, but then his mother shows up.
Oh, played by Mary Jo Pearl.
Played by Mary Jo Pearl.
Which I didn't care for her character to begin with, but it's like slowly over time, especially when when Trace Beaulieu left the series and she sort of became the Mad. I kind of started coming around. I definitely came around about the character, but she was definitely hard to like at first. And I think Mary Jo herself said she had actually based Pearl on her own mother. So
Yeah, I think that the other thing too is like, it was just sort of a transition. I mean, when
Yeah.
people get used to something, they don't want it to change. And
and I think that was the hardest thing with the show at that time.
that
because
was the dark times.
Because at that time, before they went over to sci-fi, it was, Comedy Central was starting to change anyways. They were becoming the Daily Show,
Yeah.
South Park channel, which, I've stated my feelings on that before, but, I kind of feel like it kind of lost something when it started sort of becoming what I feel like was more commercial. And suddenly Mystery Science Theater 3000, which had been kind of the crown and the jewel for this network, was suddenly becoming a hindrance because it took up so much time that they.
Well, that's the thing. It was a 2-hour time slot.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is like when it went from Comedy Central to it was really like Saturday mornings.
Yeah.
It was like Saturday mornings is like piss time. Nobody cares about what the hell's going there.
Exactly.
But then like it moved from Comedy Central to Sci-Fi.
Yep. It got
mainly
canceled
because
it got canceled.
it got canceled, but there was a fan letter writing campaign
Right.
to USA Networks and Sci-Fi Channel. They said, okay, well, this is whatever. And whoever was in charge of the Sci-Fi Channel, he also came from MTV.
Uh-huh.
And he was one of those where like, why is this show on? I don't get this. And so then they required them only sci-fi shows. Only
Exactly.
sci-fi
And
movies.
it kind of ruined a little bit of what made Mystery Science Theater 3000 quirky, is because it wasn't just, even though it had science in the name, it wasn't just science movies. It was
No.
it was old mystery movies. It was just bad
Thrillers,
movies in general.
killers.
Yep.
It was like, home ec short films.
Exactly.
And the other thing too is like this TV show also spawned a lot of people in the video collecting community too.
Right.
Because they could not necessarily record. The thing about this show is, and I think this is a very important aspect to kind of dive into,
Keep circulating the tapes.
is to keep circulating the tapes. And they stopped showing that off. I think, what was it, the second or third season? They stopped doing that.
I think so, yeah.
I can't remember exactly which one it was, but basically what happened is because people couldn't buy these tapes and they couldn't get the movies in stores, the video rental places, because back then VHSs were so expensive and so hard to get. And so like, there was this big, huge thing about there's a hardcore group of people, like every single Saturday morning, they would record the new MST 3K. They would have it, they would do what would be called tape trading, which is you would copy the tape and say somebody else has another tape that you have or they have and everything else like that. So what they do is they tape trade. So you'd get, I don't have this episode. You have this episode. I have this episode. You don't have that episode.
Okay.
Let's trade tapes. I'll copy my copy. You copy yours. We'll just trade tapes. And that's what it was. It was like the old days in the 1980s where like you were a kid and you couldn't afford all the new music, so you'd get blank tapes.
Yeah.
And you'd copy the tapes that you bought at the store. Like, say you got Metallica's and Justice for All, you'd copy that on tapes, and then somebody had like Megadeth or whatever. You just trade tapes. That's how they did it. And so like the keep circulating the tapes thing was this underground community, which again, because the other thing too is that they had the MST 3K info club. Yep. That they would have people write letters to.
I tried to join that, and I never got my membership. Damn it!
We should write a letter with the address they still have on all the episodes. See if we ever get a response from somebody. I really love Joel. He makes me laugh, and Crow's so funny.
Crow talks a lot. Is that
I don't
why he
like
has such a
Tom.
big
Tom
mouth?
sucks.
Hey.
But yeah, so like they kept on. That's the other thing. They would actually read. They would read letters from kids.
Actually, my first year in college, my roommate at the time actually had videotape copies of Mystery Science Theater 3000. So I got to see a lot of episodes, Joel episodes I might have missed during during the time he was on the show. So I got to see stuff like Ring of Terror and ones I I missed on the first bounce.
Now the other thing too is like a lot of these episodes, they were tied to copyright licensing.
Yes.
So, like for example, there was like movies that they would buy the copyright to. They would own the right to like show it on their show, but after a couple years, the copyright would just lapse, and so
Right.
basically now that show cannot be broadcast or sold or distributed to anybody because of the rights issues between the original copyright owners and everything else like that.
That's what happened one of the box sets, because I think one of the Godzilla films they lost the copyright on, and they have a little skit where they actually did a reunion between Joel, Trace, and Frank, where Frank actually does the voice of Tom Servo for the little skit, as well as you have Dr. Forrester and Frank explaining how to fix your DVD collection and get rid of the giant lizard monster movie, and I think it was like replace it with the giant Gila monsters movie instead. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one of those instances where I think the copy, like you said, the copyright lapsed, and they got in trouble for having that included in the collection because they no longer had the rights to show it.
Exactly. There's other things like there are other films that probably people would never have been able to see that really got a lot of attention from it. One was called Time Chasers.
Oh gosh, that was awful.
Well, you don't go on MST3K if you're good. So.
Oh, I know. That one and Hobgoblins. Oh my gosh, I wanted to kill the cast after I saw that episode. It's like that the rather easy girl in the movie who does like the hip thing every time her boyfriend shows up, and they go boinking in the van. And apparently recently MST had relaunched when MST relaunched their own platform, the Gizmoplex. They actually talked to the guy who did the effects for Hobgoblins. Who actually made the Hobgoblins, and he admitted that they were very cheaply made, and he actually built them on his his kitchen table.
Yeah, but I mean, like before I forget about it, like especially with Time Chasers, that was a movie that was made that was an independent film.
Yes,
made in Vermont.
That's right.
Okay, it was about basically a scientist who discovers time travel, and he uses his plane to go from one part of history to another.
Why people? Who knows?
Yeah, and so basically, what ends up happening is his invention gets is used by this company to do bad things, and he has to stop them. And it's like one of the most ridiculous bad movies you'll ever see.
It's Birdemic before there was ever a Birdemic.
Oh God, I think this is better than Birdemic.
Oh yeah, Sharp Stick in the Eye is better than Birdemic.
Root canals are better than Birdemic.
Oh gosh, a prostate exam is better than Birdemic.
Oh my God.
Apparently, the other famous film that was made got attention from Mystery Science Theater 3000 was, of course, Mitchell, which was Joel's last episode, which might have been his best. He kind of went out on a really good episode, but it was also something that apparently there's stories that Joe Don Baker wanted to kick their asses because of the episode.
That's not the only movie that they did of him.
That's even funnier, is they also did Final Justice, which I'm not sure might be a worse movie than Mitchell. It's
oh my God,
kind of but that's another one that had like sometimes they do great ending scenes with the when they're doing the credits, and it's like both Servo and Crow just basically making fun of just basically weight shaming Joe Don Baker, and just like doing the whole thing about just him eating everything.
Yep.
Singing singing to the song, you got to run or he'll steal your lunch. And
the other thing, now there's actually another episode that I think actually has a little bit more significance than a lot of people think. It's called Clonus. Hold on a second, let me see if I can Google it. Clone.
I think I know which one you talk about, but I don't know if I've seen that one.
All right, The Clonus Horror,
Okay,
which was a 1979 science fiction film that was lampooned by Mystery Science Theater in 1997.
okay.
And what happened is that, okay, so the plot of it is that there's this special compound called clonus, where people are basically bred to be the replacement parts and organs for famous people.
Oh, it's a happy film.
Yeah, it's a happy film. And so, like, you know, this one guy, this one clone finds out the truth, escapes, and he finds his donor person, and they try to expose. Anyways, what ends up happening is that, you know, that's basically how the movie started. And so the authors of this movie from 1979 were suing DreamWorks for copyright on the movie called The Island, if you recall that film.
I don't recall that film.
Okay, so The Island was a movie that was directed by Michael Bay in 2005.
Okay.
And basically had the same plot. Everything was the same. It was exactly the same movie. And so one of the things that because they highlighted this movie, the director, who he wasn't exactly happy that his movie was being made fun of, but at the same time, if it wasn't for the fact that this movie was being lampooned on, he actually says that Mystery Science Theater 3000 helped their case.
Good.
Because it actually it actually made him realize that, oh, hey, everything else like that, you know, like this is the exact same movie.
Shame on you, Michael Bay, ripping off a bad film just to make your bad film. Have you no shame?
And by the way, Peter Graves is in Clonus Horror too.
That was another ongoing joke with Mystery Science Theater was Peter Graves, because Crow did like it did a play called Peter Graves Goes to the University of Minnesota, and the only line's like, "Hi, I'm Peter Graves, and I'm here to apply for the University of Minnesota."
But you know, that's the thing. They had some serious cultural impact.
Oh, absolutely.
By actually, like, you know, kind of not necessarily like preserving movies, but like, you know, showing people a little bit of difference. Like, you know, there are other movies out there to watch. And I think that kind of really spawned at least my generation to kind of like, you know, not to realize that they could make movies no matter what the budget is, you know?
Yeah.
And obviously, like, you know, Mystery Science Theater 3000 didn't last as long as it should have. I mean, it lasted for like 10 years.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
From November 23rd, Thanksgiving Day, November 23rd, 1988.
Yep.
All the way to August 1999.
Yes.
That's a long run. That's 11 years.
Yep.
And then what they did, what Joel and the bots did, is they started doing what's called riff tracks.
Actually, it wasn't Joe. It was Mike. It was Mike. Bill, and Kevin did riff tracks.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
I think what had happened was after Mystery Science Theater 3000, there was talk for a little while that Jim Mallon wanted to restart Mystery Science Theater, but as kind of a direct to DVD, direct to video sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys just found, the pay for it was so unbalanced. It was like Jim Mallon was getting so much more than what Mike and Bill and Kevin would be getting. So they just said, oh, well, to heck with this. And so they started doing this series called The Film Crew, which was basically the same thing as Mystery Science Theater 3000. It was going to be, direct to video. They'd still be, the whole premise was they were doing film commentary for films, which was them riffing films. And I think at the same time, Mike was doing riff tracks as kind of a solo thing where he was riffing topical films. And then I think they kind of stopped really doing The Film Crew and then started doing riff tracks. And I feel like riff tracks itself didn't start getting really good until they started going back and finding like all these like really oddball, unknown films like Santa Claus and the Ice Cream Bunny, or the one my wife hates, Roller Gator.
I think one of the things that made riff tracks cool for me is that instead of actually having, the bad movies, they could also go after the good movies too.
Yeah.
Like, because there's a riff tracks of the original Iron Man.
I wasn't really keen on like doing the good movies or the ones that we knew about. I always the thing about, at least for me, I know it's different for everybody else, but for me, it's the quirky, obscure films that were possibly directed by somebody who did porn or something. One of them, I don't know if he's Planet of Dinosaurs was one of them.
Yeah, that's another one.
They blew their entire budget on a few scenes of stop motion dinosaurs, and I remember just watching the film and thinking to myself, am I watching porn? Is this actually I could see them taking their clothes off, but it's like the acting and the camera work is bad enough where this is like porn bad.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. That's a pretty bad movie. But but
the riffs are great in that one.
Oh, the riffs are great, and they did all kinds of stuff, and then they did, of course, the live events.
Yes,
they did Fathom events. They'd actually have live riffings with a live audience, and you can tell they'd have their notes and everything all ready to go. They did they've done short films where they were talking about grass.
Yes,
that's a funny one. Oh my God!
Yeah.
So many that they did, and then they did and then of course there was a real push to get Mystery Science Theater back.
But before that, they kind of did, because at the same time as riff tracks, Joel, Trace, Frank, Josh, and Mary Jo started doing touring as Cinematic Titanic.
Oh, that's right. That's correct. Cinematic Titanic.
Which I still think Cinematic Titanic had some of the best riffs ever.
Oh my God!
But
some of those movies.
But I think some of that was due to the fact that they weren't really restricted by censorship or anything like that. So it's like, Trace and Frank especially could get away with stuff that they could probably never ever get away with on Mystery Science Theater 3000. But
of course,
and also I thought, because it's like the original first season of Mystery Science Theater 3000. It was kind of a little bit on the rough side, and I don't think J. Elvis Weinstein got a really good chance to shine in that one. Whereas you really get to see what he can do in Cinematic Titanic, and a lot of the lines he says are just so hysterical. I mean, one of my favorites was it was a kind of a mix of them. They did this movie called Danger on Tiki Island, and there's this actress. They obviously picked her just because of certain attributes, and
of course
it's like every line she says, she sounds like she's like making love to her script or something, because it's like this one line of her just like explaining, she just I can't wait to get into like a good soft comfortable bed, and Mary Jo makes some lines, says, I'm too sexy for my lines. And then there's another line that Josh speaks where he just says, gosh, she's hornier than Mrs. Roper. I think Trace actually calls her Nurse Ballbreaker at one time, because she just keeps on going back and forth with this one scientist guy who I think she's supposed to be married to in the film, but there's this one. The whole thing in the movie is like I think there's like man-eating plants or something that is trying to take over the island, but there's one point where the plants tear off this actress's clothes, so you get like a very brief back shot of her. It's like, oh, that's why she was cast in the movie. Okay. It's like this was a movie that was made for that. It was like it was like the wrestling scene in Manos: The Hands of Fate. You get the feeling, it's like, oh, this is why that this scene was made. All of Manos' wives wrestling and in very sheer 90s. Same difference. But actually, out of Cinematic Titanic, one of my favorite movies they riffed was a movie called, I think it's called The Alien Factor.
Oh yeah, I remember you showed that to me.
Yeah, and it looks like it was all filmed in like Delaware or somewhere or Jersey or somewhere
somebody's farmland.
Yes.
Like the police car. The police car is like somebody's pickup truck.
Yes. No, it was like somebody's like two-door sedan, and he's like, and that was another one of those great lines Trace made. He goes, when in the history of anything has there ever been a two-door police car? This is just the one point where they've got like the somebody's like a station wagon. They're using it as an ambulance, and I think Mary Jo goes, "Why don't they just take a spray can and paint ambulance on the side of it?" It really was. It really
It's kind of like,
that
you know, they needed the
bad of a
Camaro
movie.
Man to show up.
Yes.
But that's the kind of the deal, you know, like those movies, and the, you know, like
And another joke in the movie was one before I forget was Trey. Supposedly the guy's talking to some woman on the phone, and he hangs up, and Trace says, as the guy goes, "I did it. She likes me. I got a date. And the guy looks down in the scene, and Trace goes, "Uh-oh," like he just wet in his pants or something. When he did that, like now, it was like an old episode watching Mystery Science Theater for the first time, where I just started laughing hysterically because it's like you got the inference.
they were not like connected to they didn't have the thing holding them back, you know.
Yeah.
They didn't have that at all. That was kind of like the thing that kept it going, you know, like it was amazing.
And same thing with riff tracks. Mike, Bill, and Kevin, I think, can sort of say a lot more than they could when they were on Mystery Science Theater 3000. So you get a lot of like these really crazy off the wall riffs. But also, they're not only the ones riffing. There's also other riffers that take part in riff tracks as well, including Mary Jo and Bridget Jones Nelson, who riff as a duo, and they're hysterical.
Yeah. I mean, just so much stuff. It was so much stuff. And then of course there was the Netflix Kickstarter,
series.
the Netflix series. Now there was a Kickstarter campaign to get that going.
That was amazing. That was actually, it was like, I think they were funded in a day.
Yeah.
Or at least it felt like they were funded in a day.
It was quick.
I think it's in Guinness.
Together.
I think it's in Guinness as the world's fastest Kickstarter campaign, or like the world's fastest, the most quickest Kickstarter campaign ever funded, or something like that.
But so they get the Kickstarter campaign. It becomes a success, and they go on Netflix. And of course, they have to, Joel, and they brought a lot of people back just for short little things,
Yeah, and I think that was great. I mean, the whole scene with Mary Jo, Brain Guy, and Bobo, showing up, and I just thought it was hysterical, the idea that they're just still bumming around the galaxy in Pearl's minivan or microbus or something like that.
Absolutely. And of course they got Jonah Ray.
Yeah, who I thought was a great host.
Yeah, he did great. He did fantastic. I thought
him and Hampton Yount and Baron Vaughn, I thought, were fantastic as Crow and Servo respectively. And it took a little time for me to get used to the new Servo voice, just because I'd been just so used to both J. Elvis Weinstein and Kevin Murphy's version of Servo that had just been they had just had kind of a similar tone to this. But watching the episodes, Baron, just fits, this iteration of Mystery Science Theater's Servo. He was the perfect for the part.
And of course, the two Mads this time was Felicia Ray.
Yes.
And
Felicia Day and
Patton Oswalt.
Who I can't think of anybody better to play the son of TV's Frank than Patton Oswalt.
I mean, that was just freaking brilliant.
It was.
And the first season was called The Gauntlet.
No, that was the second season.
But that's the second season. They were like, and so it was sort of designed to be binged.
Yes.
And that was great.
And I thought it was great the fact that Joel was sort of quietly in the series as the guy who sends them the movies. I think his name was like Arnie or Artie or something like that.
Movie in the hole.
Yep, that was him. And it was just a great twist on the whole premise of Mystery Science Theater 3000, where they went out of their way to make it more meta, make it known that this is a show. Whereas in the old series, it's like there were jokes where it's like they'd be seeing like the moon. And it's like, hey, it's the logo. It's like, we're not supposed to talk about that. Whereas this one, they completely embraced the whole thing of being meta.
Yeah.
And, just like King of Foresters determined to like franchise her family's experiment on moon, on I think it was like Moonbase 1 or Moonbase, some moon base.
One of my favorites.
Moon 13, because it's Deep 13.
Yeah, one of my favorites in the Netflix show has got to be Star Crash.
Oh my God, I love that one.
That movie is, well, first of all, it's another movie I remember as a kid watching, because like back in the 1980s, anything sci-fi was like mine.
Oh, absolutely.
And then of course Star Crash is one of those movies I grew up to watch because it also had like freaking David Hasselhoff in it.
And Caroline Munro, who seemingly seems to wear less and less as the movie goes on.
I mean, yeah. And then of course it had like all the other things like robots and spaceships and everything else like that. And they put it in there, and it's like one of the funniest episodes ever. Well,
that was the thing. It was one of these movies where it's like they'd heard about the whole idea of Lucas doing kit bashing and making model like sort of kit bashing models together to make starships. They tried to do the same thing to a very not as good effect, where I think you can actually see like trees from the models or other stuff stuck to the ships that aren't supposed to be stuck to the ships. Nobody will see that, sort of thing. But
yeah,
that was a really good. That was one of my favorite episodes they riffed. That one, and I think it was called Cry Wilderness, which had a very Pod People feel to it, where the kid's like friends with Bigfoot for some reason.
Oh, God sakes.
But I think, like you'd mentioned at the for the second season on Netflix, doing the whole thing of parodying the whole idea of binge watching, which we all have done. I don't do as much. I kind of like a lot of the times I do once in a while, but most of the time I kind of like stopping it and sort of trying to save the series so I don't watch it in one go. But sometimes you just can't help it. I mean,
no. I mean, like that's how it is nowadays. Another favorite of mine from the new show is called Avalanche.
Oh my goodness, that was the one that it had like what was it, Rock Hudson and
yeah. It was like a TV movie. It was like, I guess they made it as a movie. It was a TV movie and it had all the TV guest stars on it, and like Lee Majors, I think.
That was something they used to do back in the day of original Mystery Science Theater. Is there would be movies that were obviously like TV episodes that were kind of bashed together, like Master Ninja and Master Ninja 2.
Oh my God, yeah.
And then there was another one that was like it's supposed to be a spy movie, and I forget. I think it was like Codename Diamond Head. Which, at the end of it, it was so obvious that they were like cutting for commercial, and they're all like, "Hey, wait a minute! This is just a made-for-TV movie." Boo!
And then like one of them gets a phone call, and like the answer is like, "Hello, sorry, we're not going to series."
Yes, that was it. But yeah, it's the same thing. I'd never actually seen the Avalanche when it was originally on TV. It was probably a little bit before my time. But yeah, that was another one that was like so obviously actors slumming it on TV.
Yeah, because it was like, well, what do we do between the big movies? Oh, we do these small little shitty TV projects.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, so.
But of course, Netflix, who doesn't know a good thing when they have it, of course, canceled, Mystery Science Theater 3000.
That's what they do.
But yeah, I guess in interviews with some of the cast, like Felicia and Jonah Ray, they weren't they found themselves not completely comfortable with the whole, like the big budget, the sort of more big budget they had with Netflix, and kind of missed the whole do it yourself feel that the original series had, which now brings us that, you thought, just when you thought, it was the end, Mystery Science Theater comes back yet again. And now they, not only that, they have their own platform, the Gizmoplex.
Yeah.
And again, another record-breaking Kickstarter, which I ended up taking part in. So I'm getting to see like episodes on the Gizmoplex, right now for free till, for a few amount of months. But I think what they're going to do is they're going to have it set up so if you don't have to like get a whole package to watch episodes, you can sort of purchase episodes separately now that it's gone official. Nice.
You're gonna have to give us the lowdown on that, how well they are.
I'm enjoying them. It's again taking the whole idea of the world of Mystery Science Theater 3000 further, where they're now not only just having Jonah Ray as a host, they're introducing a second and third host in this new series. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things they've sort of created in the narrative of the show. Kinga has created the Gizmoplex, and the Kinga Dome, which they watch the movies in.
I think that's going to be the nature of entertainment now, niche entertainment. Because let's be honest, Mystery Science Theater 3000. Well, I like it, you like it, and obviously the people who are going to be listening to this are going to like it as well.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just one of those shows that it's just not for everybody,
Right.
and people aren't going to get it. But the people who do get it, who do enjoy it, are just rabid fans of
absolutely, absolutely. And just seeing the results on this Kickstarter, because it was like, I think the original, they were planning on just doing, maybe, starting out, if we get so much money, we'll do 6 episodes. Well, they went far and beyond that, where it's like they're going to get to do I think a 9 to 12 episode series. And on top of having, Jonah Ray and his bots return, they're actually bringing in Emily Marsh, who had done hosting for the live shows.
Mm-hmm.
The live shows they've been doing across the country. So she's now hosting with her own set of bots, people that she had hosted with the on the live shows. But even further, apparently, since people went far and beyond what the Kickstarter had initially needed for funding, Joel's actually going to be coming back as a host.
Yep.
And I'm kind of hoping that they actually pair him off again with Bill Corbett and J. Elvis Weinstein, because they had done a riffing as Joel and the Bots for a charity. I guess this rec center or this community center for Native Americans out in I don't know if it was out in Minnesota somewhere, got damaged and destroyed. So they had started so people had started a campaign to try to put money into helping to rebuild this rec center for people. And Joel had actually also gotten in on it and said, if you pledge a certain amount of money, myself, Bill Corbett, and J. Elvis Weinstein will riff a short as Joel and the Bots. And if you pledge a little bit more, we'll do a second riff. Well, of course, people contributed, and so they did 2 short films as Joel and the Bots, and they sound terrific. And it's really interesting because it's a pairing of a Servo and a Crow actor who had never really worked together. You had J. Elvis Weinstein, who was Servo early on in the series, and then you had Bill Corbett, who took over for Crow after Trace Beaulieu left.
Mm-hmm.
And they work really well together, and the riffs are great. So I'm kind of hoping when Joel does his episode, he does his episodes with Bill and Josh, because I think those would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
And the other thing with Emily's version of her and the Bots is they actually have a woman doing the voice of Crow for these episodes. Yeah. And it's really kind of neat, and it just shows it doesn't matter whomever is voicing the roles, as long as the jokes are funny and they're the right fit. It doesn't matter what your gender is.
Yeah. Wow, I think we covered everything.
I think we did, and it just, like we said, it's just such a great and storied show, and it's one of those shows. It's like I'm kind of glad it's come back, and the other thing I'm kind of glad about is the fact that Joel got the rights to do Mystery Science Theater 3000 again. He was able to buy it from Jim Mallon, and that's how we ended up getting the Netflix series. So
I would simply say to all those people who are listening and watching this, obviously, to definitely check out as much as you possibly can. There's a lot of streaming services that actually have a lot of the classic episodes up for free.
You can get it on Shout Factory TV.
Shout Factory TV. Tubi, Shout Factory. If you have the Netflix series, definitely check that out.
Pluto TV also has a Mystery Science Theater channel that plays it like live TV. So it's one of those things that's just, Pluto is great. And I've mentioned it over and over again that, if you're just looking to just shut off your brain and just have something to watch when you just get home from work, Pluto TV is great.
They also have Tubi has the cinematic Titanics. They have the riff tracks. So check it all out, because before, when they did riff tracks, you had to actually download an MP3 and have a legal copy of your movie. So you
Right.
had to literally sync it up yourself at home.
Because I mean, with stuff like the Phantom Menace or Lord of
Oh
the Rings,
yeah.
you couldn't sync it up on online because you would get into a shitload of legal troubles. Whereas you say, well, we made this this audio file. All you have to do is just sync it up to your to the movie, and then you can watch the movie with the audio file,
Yep.
which was a very good way of getting around that.
Mm-hmm.
But is there a favorite episode of Mystery Science Theater that you really liked?
Oh, beyond the ones that I've already mentioned.
Yeah.
Actually, there is one, and it's the series finale on the Sci-Fi Network. It was Diabolique.
Oh yes.
That one was the one where the criminal, the master criminal, and it looked like he was in a bondage outfit, like driving around like driving around like a Jaguar. It was
Yes.
like one of those like master thief kind of movies in the 1960s. And it's just so ridiculously over the top. And it's also the last episode where Pearl accidentally sends the ship to crash into Milwaukee.
Yes, that's right. So
So at the end of the episode, you've got Mike and the bots basically sitting down watching watching a movie and starting to riff it, just sitting in the living room, you know.
yeah.
So that's one of my favorites. I mean, obviously they've all got their own little special thing, but that one, I think the way that they kind of concluded the show in 1999, that was pretty good.
It was a good way to wrap it up. I mean,
it was a very good way.
I know it was a tough last season for them, but there was still some really good episodes during the sci-fi days. And one of them I remember is they actually riffed a Gumby cartoon, Robot Rumpus, which apparently Crow and Servo just get totally upset because the robots get destroyed at the end. So they end up doing their own little claymation with like, I think the clay figures are named like Phil Dirt and Cow Plop or something like that. And they end up, of course, they're trying to get Mike to move them. He goes, and now crush them, Mike, crush them. Because just, to have the robots crush, just kill the robots. Like then they start crying. It's like, okay, I'll tell Pearl no more Gumby shorts. The other one was one called Spring Fever, where a guy wishes that all the springs would go away in the world. So
God, yeah, I remember that one.
And one of the funniest things about Bill Corbett's Crow that kind of put him different from Trace Beaulieu is it seemed like Bill had less patience with the movies. Like he would actually get pissed off with scenes, which was hysterical because there's one scene where the guy's trying to close the door to the glove compartment and it won't close because there's no spring in it. And you hear Crow say, yeah, let's try it 5 more times because it didn't work the last few times. But I think my favorites were always the Gamera movies.
Oh, God, yeah.
I think I definitely have to say the Gamera ones are definitely at the top of my list of ones I really enjoyed. That, and I think War of the Colossal Beast was one that I liked because, again, it had another great Mike as Glenn the Colossal Man scene, talking with the guys. And that always brought the episodes when they had characters from the movie come out and talk with the characters.
Yeah.
Hugh Beaumont, as the one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse or something. On behalf of Andrew, thank you for listening to the Mental Suppository. Until next time, this is Brett Herholtz saying,
Reptilicus is silly, but he really illustrates the great array of monsters all over the place. Not just in Japan, but across the planet. An A to Z gamut or gargantuan panoply.
Example, please.
Or name a land.
Belize.
Oh, geez, easy peasy. Mesa, maze. See, in the Yucatan, you can meet El Cadejo, and Belize, they believe in him. They're not afraid to say so.
Scotland.
Nessie's living up in a lot.
How about Poland?
Scary crow named Babak.
So it's not just Godzilla?
Well, duh, Crow. There's a lot that could kill you.
Hey.
Tom.
Sorry, Crow.
Okay.
Rose.
Joe.
Yo, Jonah, how's the chorus go?
Every country has a monster they're afraid of in their nation.
Every monster
has a country,
yeah, a station they call their home.
Guter Glebing out in Crobin.
What turned the musteer's guts to spaghetti?
Was it in Tibet?
Yep.
I bet he met a Yeti.
Australia?
There drop bears will impale ya.
Then they'll sell you hella touristy paraphernalia.
Chupacabras chewing up cattle down in Mexico. Del Geet's horns goring, battling a Navajo. Congo's Congamado is a Mongo flying dino. I know I don't want to die, but when I do, he'll be the guy.
Whoa! So, Crow,
Servo?
ready to go?
Start slow.
Crowperman is a monster from Luxembourg.
Who's actually the size of Luxembourg.
He crushed the whole country of Luxembourg.
Because he is the size of Luxembourg! What? Egypt's got mummies like Tutankhamun.
Leprechaun, Milan, and Boston Common.
Bot's got the hang of it, the song's really kicking.
Chickadee China, the Chinese chicken!
By that I mean Zhufang and Peng, giant Chinese birds, and one of them turns into a fish. Anyway, Canoes, Killer Shrews, and the Loop Guru, Baba Yaga, Jorogumu, and the Impundulu. Now you guys realize the surprising size of all the worldwide Daikaiju.
Every country has a monster they're afraid of in their nation. Every monster has a country.
That's Canada.
Got a station they call their home. Towns of Bound, all the Swiss. Every country has a monster they're afraid of in their nation. Route 13. Every monster has a country. Yeah, we got movie time.
I'd hate to shoot a butt like that.
Circulate the podcast.
Circulate the podcast. Hack the planet.